Welcome to the Gnostic Hub. I am your host, Elizabeth. It is an honor to have you with us once again in this marvelous journey as we seek answers to the most basic questions that have captivated men throughout history. Our goal is to provide you with the guidance needed in helping you achieve a more holistic lifestyle. Today's topic is the need to change our way of thinking to achieve an awakened consciousness. So let's get started. When we start thinking according to the ideas we are about to discuss, and we consciously decide to engage in a revolutionary psychology, then and only then we will be able to achieve the right vision on life. This is what Master Samael Aumbeor wrote in the Treatise of Revolutionary Psychology. It would not be possible to open the interior mind if we don't learn to think psychologically. Unquestionably, when we start observing ourselves, that is a sign that we are starting to think in a psychological way. Currently, the human mind is, unfortunately, we should call this a degenerate state because of the so-called impressions. Every impression emitted by our mind is the result of everything we have learned throughout history, what we have been told, what we have seen, or even whatever we have studied. But all these impressions are based in the experience and in our own way of thinking. First of all, we need to understand how is it necessary to know the laws of the Gnostic esoteric work. That is, if we indeed want to make a radical and conscious change. At this point, truly speaking, we will state that the first place where we shall begin to work on ourselves will need to be within our very own mind and our emotions. Actually, it will be ridiculous to try to begin anywhere else. Working within any other of the human centers, it will have just disastrous results. For instance, if we were to start working or start this spiritual journey with our motor center, which is related to the habits, customs, and actions that we do every day, obviously this would be like beginning our spiritual path, inducing ourselves with an absurd, extreme fakirism. But why is this a true statement? Well, in our previous class titled The Four Paths, we discussed and talked about fakirs and how they put their bodies in extreme conditions. For example, they are committed to maintaining their bodies in a certain position for an indefinitely length of time until it becomes so rigid they cannot longer function at all. Some fakirs go to the extent to becoming living statues. But after all that pain and suffering, these fakirs have not achieved any spiritual development at all. There is no enlightenment at the end of their undertaking. It is obvious that they develop some willpower, but we must not think that they are able to create the body of conscious will. No, 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 definitely not. It is impossible to create an interior or exterior body outside of the ninth sphere. The ninth sphere, as all esoteric students would know, is the work that is involved between a man and a woman and their creative energies. If it were possible to create anybody outside or in the absence of the ninth sphere, then we would have been born from air or from water or from a rock. But we are children born from the crossing of energies between a man and a woman. Therefore, leading us to understand that the creation is always accomplished within the ninth sphere. Therefore, no fakir can create the body of conscious will away from the ninth sphere. Therefore, nothing is gained by those who consecrate their bodies and minds to fakirism except developing some willpower, as we stated before. Therefore, the path to spiritual enlightenment is not an easy one. Seeking spiritual enlightenment with the motor center, for example, at the very beginning would be absurd. To start working with controlling the sexual center right from the get-go without having the correct information about the body of the Gnostic doctrine is even worse. Because someone who starts in an ordinary condition like the one we're in right now, it is not going to know what to do. And therefore, it is not going to succeed. When those centers start to react to the circumstances surrounding them, the student doesn't know what he's doing or she is doing. And if you don't have a clear understanding of the work that you need to do or how you need to do it, then we'll be making very serious mistakes. Mistakes that can stray us from the path, or mistakes that will put us even behind where we started. The human body has 7 different centers. Those centers are located throughout our physical body. There will be a class coming up that will deal and will explore every single one of those centers. In this particular class, I'm just going to mention them and let you know where they are. What we need to do is work each one of those centers individually in order to achieve final enlightenment. Those centers are as follows. The first center is the intellectual center and is found in the pineal gland right here. Or sometimes some people locate it right around the brain area. Second, the motor center, and that can be found right at the level of the thyroid gland right here, or the very first vertebrae of our spine. Third is the emotional center, and that is located right here in the heart. And this particular center is split in two. We can locate it in our heart and the solar plexus, known also commonly as the belly button. The fourth center is the instinctive center, and is located at the last vertebrae in our spine, also known as the sacral bone. And finally, we have the fifth center, the sexual center. And that one, as the name calls for it, is located in our reproductive organs. There are also two other superior centers that we really don't even have access to them until a true consciousness has been developed within ourselves. The sixth center is called a superior emotional, and the seventh is called a superior mental. I want to make a small parenthesis and I want to show this statue right here. You see this little bonnet that all the statues of Buddha have when we go by to the stores and we see all the statues have this like a hat. Well, what this represents is the pineal gland. And what it's telling us is that this particular Buddha has already developed its pineal gland. So this center has already been conquered. To start our spiritual development, we need to work with all these centers of our body, all the centers that we are able to manage. We must begin with the intellectual and emotional center, for they are the easiest to control. And when I say control, I don't really mean it's easy, but compared with the other centers, well, we could say that it's a walk in the park. If we decide to start with any other centers than the ones that we are recommending, we will be making very serious mistakes. Mistakes that will make our progress impossible to achieve, and we might even fall into erroneous paths. Through our Gnostic teachings, we will give you many esoteric exercises. We will provide you with an esoteric doctrine, and we can provide you with all the knowledge needed to awaken your consciousness. But if you do not change your way of thinking, what is the use of obtaining all this intellectual knowledge? All of the knowledge that you can get from books, the lectures that you will listen to, will fall short if you do not change your way of thinking. We have been saying from the very first class in this series of videos that it is necessary and imminent to dissolve the ego, and that we have to sacrifice ourselves for humankind. We have been preaching that you must create the superior existential bodies of the being. But if you continue thinking the way you are thinking right now, the way you were thinking before you became involved in these studies, if you continue with the same mental habits as before, then you will not be able to evolve spiritually. We say that in order for us to be able to understand oneself, then we must dissolve the ego. But if we continue living with our old mental habits, with our out-of-the-date ways and systems of thinking, we will never achieve the slightest amount of conscious awakening. We are always going to live in a daze. We are always going to be behind the locked doors of our very own ignorance. Sadly enough, too many are those who are not even aware that this world, as amazing as it might seem to some, it is truly a jail to our conscience and our soul. So let's remember a passage found in the sacred scriptures in Matthew 9:16. We find a parable which clearly mentions about the old wine and the fresh wine or new wine. As Jesus Christ says, nobody would pour new wine into old wineskins because the old wineskins would burst. Therefore, for the new wine, there is a need for a new wineskin. Also, the great Kabir Jesus said that nobody would even think of mending old clothes with pieces of brand new clothing. We wouldn't rip pieces of a new suit to mend an old suit. This would be absurd, right? Therefore, these new teachings that you are getting, that you are receiving, this Gnostic wisdom is like the new or fresh wine. It needs a new wineskin. And what is that wineskin? Well, it is the mind. It is necessary to change the way of thinking. Just like the new wine needs new wineskin, for this new knowledge, we need a new way of thinking. It is imperative for us to succeed. That is the serious heart of the matter. Because if we receive these teachings and we attach it to our old way of thinking, we're not doing anything. We're basically deceiving ourselves. If we want to hook up this vehicle of the Gnostic teachings, this brand new vehicle of the Gnostic teachings, to our old beaten vehicle, beaten by time and full of garbage and filth, well, that is to swindle ourselves, to lie to ourselves. What we need is to prepare a brand new transformed vessel with a truly magnificent capturing mind. If you are able to understand that this wisdom you are getting, this wisdom that is as old as time, that requires a new way of thinking, then maybe you will be able to receive that Gnostic teachings like the new wine needs a new wineskin. And if you are able to understand what I just said in the last few minutes, then I can feel that I have achieved my goal. That the only way for you to keep understanding this wisdom, not merely at a superficial level, but at a deeper one, can only be done with a transformation in our way of thinking. So if you're thinking to yourself right now, how are we going to change our way of thinking? The mind has been many times been compared to a donkey. You know why is that? Well, simply because donkeys are stubborn. And that is truly how our mind is, stubborn. set in its ways? Well, we need to start controlling our mind. And the way we are going to do this is by starting eliminating all negative emotions, everything negative from us, because those negative emotions will hinder and they will not allow us to continue with the change. It is impossible to transform ourselves if we still retain negative emotions. We must destroy all negative emotions from our heart because they are indeed dangerous in every sense, and they will trick us whenever we are about to continue or start our spiritual journey. There are many kinds of negative emotions, as we are all aware. They are produced by our psychological defects, otherwise known as the ego. So, if you're still hesitant to understand what is the ego, what are psychological defects, what are negative emotions, and how we need to dissolve them, I'm not going to go into much detail in this class because we already covered it in a previous video, actually in a couple of videos. But if you want to get more in-depth knowledge, then go back and watch one of these two videos or both of them if you can. The first one will be observation and self-remembrance. And the other one will be, which is an amazing video that you will get a lot out of it, is called Dealing with Emotions. It will give you a step-by-step guidance on how to dissolve the ego. One of the most common emotions we deal with since a very young age is lying. And lying is certainly a false connection. What is true in us is the energy of our Divine Father, the energy that He provides us, and that comes from our inner being. That energy fluctuates throughout the inner cosmic organization until it arrives to the mind. But when we succumb ourselves to lying, when we become slaves of lies, unfortunately, this energy that comes from our inner Father cannot present itself. If we are always conducting a false connection, but if we are conducting ourselves in a false connection, the energy from our inner Father cannot be channeled correctly. It cannot be channeled at all. It is just like the source of energy to a light bulb, right? If it gets interrupted, the electricity will not reach the bulb or the bulbs. And that electricity required for the bulb to emit the light, it will not happen. Usually when a person is filled with negative emotions, they normally will turn into liars. A person that is always distorting the truth. Therefore, to fully understand how to manipulate our negative emotions, well, it can only be achieved by changing our old way of thinking into a new one. Many Gnostic teachers make the mistake of allowing their students to begin their spiritual journey working in the ninth sphere. Without dissolving the ego first, this is absurd and even erroneous because the student that has not changed their way of thinking and continue with the same, sometimes even inhumane sexual feelings, become victims of their own negative emotions. They do not understand the mysteries of sex and therefore profane them. That is why Paracelsus insisted that, first of all, before anyone starts their spiritual journey, they are in great need. It is necessary for them to know the science of the esoteric work before even thinking to enter the work into the ninth sphere. The work that involves all the work with our creative energy. Therefore, we need to begin by changing our way of thinking. And after we have achieved this task, then we need to change the way of feeling to receive, as we said before, the new wine, the fresh wine, the Gnostic wine. That needs a new wineskin, not an old wineskin. A decrepit mind, full of old habits that go back 20, 30, 40 years, is not prepared to receive the new Gnostic wine, the new wisdom. A mind like that needs by force to completely change. If done in a different direction, then you will be wasting your time miserably. So, what exactly is it that we are after? Why do we have to be here week after week trying to achieve something? What is our end goal? Well, we are all seeking to awaken consciousness. That is the ultimate goal. That is exactly what we want. To wake up from this endless dream. Our conscience is in this endless dream because of our ego. And our ego is the one responsible for us having a mind incapable of understanding the true essence of the Gnostic wisdom. Reason why we need to change our way of thinking. It is interesting how in the East, nobody ignores that people are asleep. Nobody ignores it. But us, Western people, we believe that we are awake. However, we always do things that we don't want to do. We launch wars when we really don't want to go to war. But we go to war anyways, even if we don't want to. Why is that? Well, it is said that because we live in a state of hypnotism, we know that an individual, a hypnotized individual, for instance, when we give them an order, they will do it regardless. If we tell them, go and kill, they will obey. That is actually established in the penal law of all the countries of the planet Earth. When you are instructed to go to war, you can't refuse, or else I think you end up in jail or something. And that is because people live hypnotized. but by all exterior matters of the world, all exterior circumstances. And they believe that they are awakened. If you tell someone that time has arrived to go to war, they go to war because they are hypnotized. And there is no way to get them out of that trance. This is serious and tremendously factual. We need to get out of this hypnotic dream. Because I use the example of going to war, but all commercial entities use the same tactic of the hypnotic dream. They come up with a brand new phone. You have a good phone. You have a phone that you purchased not long ago. It's working just fine. But a new phone came up and you need it. And because they are bombarding you with all this information, with all this advertisement on TV, on the radio, on social media, whatever, because of the hypnotic dream, you feel that it's your responsibility to buy this brand new gadget, even if you don't need it. And examples like that, there are many. So, how is it possible to get away from the hypnotic dream? If we are all very happy with our very own mental habits, with our reasoning system, with our sentimental habits, with our distinct traditions acquired by our family legacy, we need to ask ourselves, what is the purpose of this class? What is the purpose of you taking the time to study this video today? We are listening to what I am saying at this moment. What is it that our soul eagers to receive from this knowledge? If we all indeed are longing for a change, but we still continue very comfortably in our old ways of thinking, in our own ways of feeling, well, then we are simply fooling ourselves. Everyone has a way of thinking, and everyone thinks that his or her way of thinking is the correct one. But in reality, the various forms of thinking of everyone or all together are incorrect. They are not right, because they are all coming to us in our hypnotized state, in our dream state. So how can a hypnotized person or a person that is always in a daze think properly? He can't. She can't. Those mental habits are erroneous, and we need to get rid of them. If you are really seeking to change, okay then. Here you have the new teachings. Here you have the Gnostic wine. But will you please bring new wineskins for this wine? Not all wineskins. The new wine will burst the old wineskin. We want all students, all seekers, to receive and retain this wisdom. But besides retaining, we want everybody to experience an awakened consciousness. And such will only be achieved by starting with the first step, changing the way of thinking. And unfortunately, I repeat it again, our conscience is like in a flask, yes, in a bottle. It is bottled within all those inhumane elements that we are carrying in our interior. All those psychological defects, that ego that we carry day in and day out. We need to break away from all of those elements within ourselves because they are the ones that have our consciousness bottled. That is the reason why we cannot experience awakening. The only thing we have within us that is truly worth is our consciousness. It is the most worthy gift we have. But the diverse psychic aggregates, which in conjunction form the ego, we also carry that with us. And they are in no way worthy. The only thing worthy, the only real thing that is meaningful within us is our consciousness. And unfortunately, due to the state of hypnotism or sleepiness our conscience is in, we do not know how to manage it. And as a result, our psychological aggregates take control of our consciousness. They tell it where to go. In reality, we don't know how to use our consciousness. And truly, that is very regrettable. If we want a change, a deep change, we must also continue learning to know what that which is called consciousness. You see, in China, in Japan, and in India, in the Oriental world, it has been said that before a bodhisattva is born in us, the bodhisattva should emerge in us. And what is a bodhisattva? You're probably asking yourself. He who possesses the causal, mental, astral, and physical body is called a bodhisattva. In other words, it is the human soul or causal soul dressed with bodies of the bodhisattva. The bodhisattva are those beings who have renounced to the happiness of nirvana just for the love of humankind. Those who in different manvantaras have delivered their blood for humankind, and even after being given the choice to live happily in nirvana, have renounced to any kind of happiness for their just to sacrifice themselves for their brethren in earth. They are the only ones that are capable to incarnate the Christ. They are the true bodhisattvas. So a bodhisattva is someone like any one of us who is able to achieve conscious awakening in this third dimension. Once you achieve conscious awakening, then you are able to experience the bodhisattva. But to become a bodhisattva, that is something way beyond what we probably are able to comprehend at this moment. Because when conscience when our conscious awakens and develops, at that point, one can see with one's own eyes how much is worth the gift named consciousness. So, it is logical that humankind has the consciousness entrapped by the ego. It is clear that while we continue thinking the way we think, feeling the way we feel, and keeping our old customs, we will never be able to awaken consciousness. On the contrary, we will continue hypnotized. We will continue living day to day in a dream. Consequently, or as a result, we will say that the bodhisattva or bodhisattva in those people is never going to develop. So the bodhisattva, which is developed and awakened, emerges in the students that soon will become a bodhisattva. So unfortunately for us, if we continue in this same path that we are, we will never be able to experience either or. We live in a painful world. All of us are full of pain, suffering. Happiness doesn't really exist in this world. Everything we consider happiness, it really isn't. It is always temporary. And therefore, happiness in this world is impossible. Because as long as there is an ego, pain has to exist. As long as we continue with our rancid form of thinking, we will not be able to have bliss. We will never be able to experience bliss as long as we are victims of our own negative emotions. We need indeed happiness. We couldn't get such an achievement if we do not awaken consciousness. And we will never awaken consciousness if we continue with the way of thinking we have so far. Therefore, first, let's check how are we thinking? What happens in our mind when things don't go our way? What happens first thing in the morning when we awake? Are we conscious that we have left the astral plane and now we are in the third dimension? Are we mesmerized by our technological gadgets as soon as we wake up, and immediately after waking up, we get ourselves immersed in the news of the world? Or are we immediately trapped by social media events that we fall into a dream again? This is what we're talking about here, about changing our way of thinking, about not falling prey to the games that our ego, the games of the psychological defects, the games that our mind play with us. This is where we need to become warriors, warriors against our own mind, not fall prisoners to it. This world is in itself the product of the law of origination. In this world is ruled by the laws of cause and effect, which are the laws of karma. They are also called laws of action and consequence. This is a very much complex world. It is a world of associations, multiple combinations, persistent dualism, a struggle among the opposites, etc. In such circumstances, It is not possible for happiness to exist in this world. Each one of us have to pay our own karma. That is true. We are full of debt. That karma obviously brings us much pain, much bitterness, and we are not happy at all. Many people think that we might be able to reach happiness through the mechanical and intellectual evolution. But that truly is a false concept because the mechanical and intellectual are just what they are. The law of evolution and the law of involution constitute the mechanical axis of the machinery named nature. There is evolution in the grain that sprouts, in the plant that grows and gives us fruits. There is involution in the plant that enters into despair and finally turns into a bunch of firewood. There is evolution in the child that forms himself in the maternal womb, in the creature that is born, that grows, matures, and lives under the light of the sun, becoming a man. But there is involution in the human being that gets old, sick, that enters into weakness, and finally dies. That is completely mechanical. The same law of karma, in certain ways, is also mechanical. We need to free ourselves precisely of the law of karma. We need to be free from the mechanical movement of nature. We need to be free, and this will not be possible by means of a mechanical evolution. Any mechanical evolution processes itself according to the laws of cause and effect. And all those laws have their enforcement here in this plane. We need to free ourselves from the laws of evolution and involution. An awakened consciousness is something very special as it evolves. And it is the only way that we can free ourselves from all those laws. As of right now, we have no idea what I just mentioned, all those different laws that I just talked about. We can't recognize them. We cannot imagine how it feels to share consciousness like an awakened consciousness with someone else or with nature. We cannot understand this energy because our consciousness has never been experienced in any other state than the degenerate state we live in, unfortunately. This eventually, our consciousness will mature when we let go of allowing our mind to be in control. And when people finally understand and accept who they really are, as long as human beings do not accept who we are, our mind will continue to run our life and not let go. An awakened consciousness is where our future lies. And we can help to plant the seed of understanding about the emotional systems now. But engaging ourselves in a journey of conscious awakening. Our evolutionary step is about dealing with all of our centers, as explained earlier. To disintegrate the ego is crucial and necessary to achieve our main goal. But it all starts with the very first step, changing the way we think. Well, with that, we conclude this week's video. And as always, thank you so much for joining us. But make sure to come back next week when we will discuss another amazing topic to help you reach that end goal of creating a greater holistic lifestyle. Please don't forget to like the video and subscribe to Gnostic Hub for weekly video updates. So let it be written, so let it be done. See you all in the next video.